Yee! Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Tiffany here, and I am the owner of Tiffany Gordon Cosplay LLC, which is a company that focuses on costume and prop fabrication as well as education. And today on this cosplay tutorial, I'm going to teach you how to make explosions! Megumin Staff from KonoSuba. Yeah. And a fun little fact about this is it actually comes apart in 3 sections for transportation. But before we begin, remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And let's go! And we're gonna first talk about how to make the basic staff. And here are all of the materials that you will need for making the staff, and I'll have links to everything in the description. As well as I have a 2D blueprint for the staff, which is available on my website, TiffanyGordonCosplay.com, also link in the description. And for making the staff, you're going to need a bone structure. And for this, I used 1/2-inch CPVC pipe. And as I said earlier, this staff comes apart in 3 sections, and I did this so I could actually fly with the staff, but you can make this as one piece and skip a lot of the threading parts for this tutorial. But for me, I ended up breaking this down into 5 different sections, with the top section being separated into 3 pieces just because of the funky bend. So first, to cut each of these pieces, and for me, I ended up doing it with my jeweler's saw, and then the pieces needed to be formed into the shape that I wanted. And for this, you will need all of your safety gear, and we're going to be using a heat gun to heat bend the pipe into the shape that we want, which is where you apply the heat into a certain section of the pipe, gradually rotating it back and forth until it becomes somewhat soft, and you'll be able to, while it's still hot, bend it and hold it in place until it cools down into that position. And once everything is cool, you're going to want to start gluing them together, and for this you're going to want to rough up with some sandpaper the parts that are going to attach, and then use 2-part epoxy to glue each of your pieces together. And the first pieces we're going to be doing are male and female CPVC 1/2-inch adapters. This is a threaded like system that will make it so you can disassemble your staff into these 3 sections. And the placement of these was so that they would be hidden underneath the finished wrap piece, and you'll see in the end how this looks. As well as I was using a lot of scrap CPVC pipe that I had sitting around, so my pieces were a little bit smaller and I had to piece them together. And for this, the top piece that I used was a T pipe, and this was so that way I could have a perfect 90-degree angle, as well as the bottom piece was a 45-degree elbow joint. And if you have a long piece of CPVC pipe, you can bend this without having to use these joints, but I was just using what I had laying around. Now, onto the foam parts. And we're going to be using 12mm EVA foam. And I laid my blueprint on top of the foam and traced it 3 times for the length of the staff. And then for the very, very top pointed part at the very tip, I traced that an extra 2 times, so 5 in total for that one section. Then you're going to want to heat treat your foam with a heat gun, followed by cutting it out with a box cutter. Once that's done, lay out 1 piece of your EVA foam, that should be the full length of the staff, and then grab your completed CPVC pipe bone structure and lay that on top as well. You will then get a Sharpie and trace around the outside of the bone structure, and we're going to be cutting out this section using a box cutter, so that way we can insert it and it will fit flush in between. And for gluing it in place, I like to use my Sure Blonder hot glue and glue gun, and this is specifically for EVA foam. They have a special type of glue, and I use this to glue the CPVC pipe to the foam. And then it's time to start gluing all the pieces together. And our CPVC pipe bone structure is going to be our middle section piece. We're going to be sandwiching it in between the other pieces of EVA foam. And you'll just want to apply your contact cement glue onto all the pieces, let them fully dry, and then start to assemble them together. Now the staff has a funky-like shape, and it actually comes to a point in the midsection of most of them. So what I did is I grabbed my blueprint, and there's actually a guideline already on there, and I cut it along that and then traced it onto my foam. And this is what I'm going to use as a center guideline to cut all of my pieces and start to shape the staff how I want it using a box cutter. We're doing it kind of like carving a cake. Now for sanding, and I highly recommend not hand sanding this because it'll take forever. So grab your Dremel and a sanding drum and go to town sanding all of your pieces smooth. There's a small detail on the staff. There's these two little ribbon-like pieces that go around. And for this, you're gonna wanna use half-round foam dowels. But I didn't have that laying around. I only had round foam dowels. So to save some money and use what I had laying around, I cut it in half. And basically the price get cut in half too. So there's your little trick. But from that, I then traced where it was going to sit on the staff, applied my contact cement glue onto both pieces, again, waited for them to fully dry, and then attached the two pieces together. Then on to the middle wrap section, and for this I cut strips of 2mm EVA foam. And after heat treating them, I applied my contact cement glue to both the strips as well as to the middle section, again waiting for them to dry before attaching them together. And I will recommend attaching it while the staff is all together, so this way you can slightly attach it above your connecting pieces so it will hide those sections. Just make sure not to have glue onto the top and the bottom section so that way it doesn't adhere. And the last thing to discuss for making the staff is your floating orb ball thingy. And I wanted this to be lightweight, so I used a 4-inch styrofoam ball. And the ball floats in the show, but reality, it's not gonna float. So I used a clear acrylic rod, and you can also use a fishing line, it's totally fine. But for structural support and for how much I travel and I fly, a acrylic rod for me was the best situation. And I just grabbed a hot wand and inserted it into the ball so it would melt the material the size of the clear acrylic rod, as well as use the hot wand to heat up the EVA foam where I wanted to insert the rod as well, and covered the styrofoam ball with foam clay. And this is the process where you want to apply water onto the styrofoam first, and then you will cover it using foam clay, slowly moving it back and forth, adding more water until the entire surface is covered and smoothed out how you want it. And the last step is to attach the clear acrylic rod to the styrofoam ball, and I did this again with hot glue. And that will complete our making process. Now for painting! And here are all the materials you will need for painting the staff. Reminder that if you don't have an airbrush gun and airbrush setup, you can always paint this by hand. It's totally fine. And as always, you will want to prime your pieces first. And for this, we're gonna be using Plasti Dip, which is a rubber spray paint. It's gonna cause your foam to be less porous, and the paint is gonna stick to it so much better, and the structural support of your foam is just gonna be better in general. And I used 3 heavy coats onto all surfaces of the staff. Reminder that you need to wait at least 1 hour in between each coat. And also don't forget to mask off the clear acrylic rod so it doesn't get the Plasti Dip on it, as well as mask off all of your threaded systems for the pipe if it is in sections. And now for painting, and we're gonna be using paint that was provided by Createx Colors, which is a line of airbrush paint. And we're gonna first start off with the ball using a base coat of Wicked White. And if you're new to airbrush painting is all about painting in layers. So we're gonna be using multiple layers to make the color that we want. And for me, I'm doing the normal KonoSuba staff, not the prequel staff, which is a different color. If you don't know that, sorry for spoilers, but it's shown everywhere. And this color is going to be crimson. Now for a little bit of shading, and we're gonna be doing a mixture of crimson and violet. And I kind of did this more towards the bottom and to kind of give it a more natural-like shade. It's kind of hard to do shading on a ball, but this is kind of what I did, and it looks really good in photos. And then for a little bit of highlights to make it pop, I did this more towards the top section, and I did Pyrrole Red. And now for the main staff section. And again, we have to do our base coat, which is Wicked White. And I wanted to get the 2 little straps out of the way because then you only have to mask off tiny little sections rather than the full staff. So for this, I did a base coat. So now we're gonna do Hansa Yellow. And this color was just way too vibrant, and it needed a little bit more shading and a little bit different colors towards the bottom. So I did a mixture of the Hansa Yellow as well as Pyrrole Orange. And then for a little bit more shading, I did a mixture of the Hansa Yellow, Pyrrole Orange, and Brown. Once the coat of paint was dry, it was then time to mask it off. And for this, I'm going to be using masking tape. And to ensure that the masking tape does not peel up your paint, you'll want to get the tape, put it onto your leg, and then peel it off, and then put it onto your piece. And this will make it a little less adhesive and it won't peel up any of your paint. Now back to painting. And for this, we're going to be focusing on the main staff section now. And the color we're going to start off with is a mixture of pyro orange, brown, and cream. And let me just say, this color was funky. The staff color, trying to match it to the show was very difficult because it's just a weird brown color in general. So I did end up doing a lot of layering back and forth after this, doing some sections a little bit darker, adding a little bit more of the jet black to it, back and forth to get the exact color, and then having a mixture of just jet black and brown to do shadings. And the last part to paint was the middle wrap section, and for this I just did cream and brown, putting it onto the piece, and then while the paint was still wet, I ended up wiping it away with a paper towel, and this kind of made it look more like fabric. The paint kind of stayed in certain sections while the white would pop through a little bit more, and it really looked good in the end. And the last part was just to seal each of our pieces, and for me, I used the UVLS Satin Clear, and this is going to ensure all of your paint is going to withstand the sunlight. It's going to stay a lot more vibrant and just last longer, as well as give the entire staff an even consistent shine to it. And I ended up applying this with my airbrush gun, but you can also just use a paintbrush to cover everything in this. And the final step to completing our staff is to attach the floating ball to the staff. And for this, I used 2-part epoxy, applying it together and then waiting for it to dry. And that completed the staff so I could make explosions! And this staff comes apart in 3 sections, so that way I can easily transport that. And it comes apart right here, as well as here. And it all fits inside a normal suitcase. In here are the 3 pieces separated, and all you have to do to put them together is this. And ta-da! You have a staff for making explosions. And that, guys, is how I made this staff for my Megumin cosplay from the anime KonoSuba. I hope you found this video helpful for making your very own one. And if so, let me know in the comments, as well as like this video and subscribe to the channel. A big thank you to all of my company sponsors here on YouTube, as well as all of those lovely members who I really appreciate, and specifically those legendary members who financially help to support me so I can continue doing this as my main source of income and my full-time job. So, I will see you for our next cosplay tutorial. Much love, guys.